It's time to engage. Here we are talking about the Orville catching up with Discovery, catching up with the Orville.
Yeah.
We had a week off there, but then Orville came in earlier, and then we had 2 episodes of Discovery in one night, and so they were like out of sync. But then the Orville took some, I guess, World Series nights off. I don't know, don't watch baseball. But apparently all of the ads during the World Series for the Orville really helped the ratings. They got like 25% more people watching this episode than the previous one.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. Now, Discovery's ratings, we don't know, because CBS All Access gets to keep that to itself, and of course, Netflix has always kept that to itself, which means the only thing left is like Space Canada. It's like, how does it look on their station? It's like, they would be giving out ratings, but that's like a ridiculously small amount of people who watch this show, so it doesn't really...
Space Canada.
Yeah, it's like not really useful for a benchmark. But let's talk about the Orville's majority rule as opposed to and compared to Discovery's magic to make the sanest man go mad. It's like every week they want it to be really hard for us to say. Either it's like Latin or Greek, or that means forgetful, or it's something that is so long that it's just like we're going to sit here and try to honestly remember it. Although, guys...
You remembered it.
I remembered it. I'm so proud. That was not easy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, off the hop, characters. It's been a little while since we got to see the characters from the Orville, and we got to see Lamar's character really have some screen time.
Yeah.
So, Vanya, what did you think?
It was good. I mean, he's true to the character that we've been seeing.
Yes.
We just got to see more of it, and he's very funny.
He got some good lines.
Yeah, he was
Especially with the
really,
jeans
really funny in this episode. And yeah, it was kind of, I thought that it was good that he was similar, like, had similar things that he said, like he drinks soda and all that stuff, and it kind of, he stuck to that, but it was kind of good to see him also be like a little bit serious and be afraid. His afraid was actually really funny though.
Yeah.
Yes, and interact with, and how they cared about him too, because when you get to see a character like that, and you get to see the other characters, how they feel about him, right? Which was nice.
Yeah. Now, what did you think about getting to see this much more of Lamar?
Well, because it was written very well, and he was very entertaining. He was very charming to see, and because of all the other characters' reactions to him, I think I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yeah,
See,
it was a lot of fun. You didn't enjoy watching it?
Funny thing, I think Lamar is one of those characters that when you get to have his awesome snarky responses, you're like, yeah, that's great. Oh, so great. And then it's like when you do the Joey show, you're like, you were an interesting part of Friends, but did I need to see Joey have his own show? I felt like Lamar, the actor is able to do something really cool as the like snipey, snarky character, but I'm not 100% sure that he's a strong enough actor to have carried that episode. That's my thought. As I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, am I just not digging this sort of the way that the Orville likes to put a 21st century character in the 24th century and then be like, here, watch. Because they all feel like 21st century characters.
Right.
With the exception of like Bortus and Isaac. Every single one of them feels like they just walked out of like an H&M in 2017. But the Lamar character, I think, has a certain like... I feel like not only is the character even more of now, he also, on his own, became like such a fish out of water that it didn't feel like I was watching a 24th century human stuck in 20th century Earth.
In fact,
felt like...
the opposite.
It almost felt like the opposite. And I was like, there's something about this, and it may not be the actor. It may be just how he's written. It may be how that character is... such a certain demographic. Like every character represents a certain demographic of 20th century Earth, 21st century Earth, and it might just be the way he didn't fit in, and maybe that's what they were going for. But the whole time I was like, is this performance? Is this writing? The Orville has a tendency to like take you out of science fiction comfort with its like humor and wackiness and zaniness, but also with its Seth MacFarlane-isms.
Right.
And I'm wondering is Lamar just so full of Seth MacFarlane-isms that I had a hard time buying it.
Yeah, I think it probably has a lot to do with the writing. I mean, it could be the actor too, but I think weighing heavier on how it's written.
Yeah.
Like, because that's how the jokes are, right? That's why it's the similar thing to how I was feeling in the beginning of the show. You know, that there was a balance missing between like the serious stuff and the jokes, and I feel like the reason I'm kind of getting used to it is because I like the characters. Like, I've gotten used to the characters.
Yeah.
So it's making it easier for me to see that balance. But I definitely think it's probably part of the writing.
I would think.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the characters on Discovery this week. Because we got to see more groovy Stamets, which, I don't know, is this mirror Stamets, or is this just like, I can see through time Stamets? Because it's kind of just feeling like, you know, he's not so out of place or from a sinister universe
That's right.
that he's behaving that kind of different. He's just behaving like I kind of always hoped Anthony Rapp would on this show.
But it's because of the I can't remember. It starts with an M. The genetic. The genetic work.
Oh, the mycelial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what the reason? That's the reason that and he knows that's what it is now. So he knows that being able to being the spore conductor is what's giving him this ability, or if you want to call it, if he wants to call it that. But it is delightful to see him like that.
And I really felt like this episode with the, hey, look what I've got in my arms. I'm able to pilot the ship. I feel like that was really necessary before last week's episode. Because in last week's episode, we're like, how the hell is this ship going everywhere? Is he getting nipple jabbed every time? And we're like, oh, he is getting nipple jabbed every time. We just didn't see it. And now he's got something new on it. But I just felt like that was a little something missing out of the main through line of your show. It's like Mushroom Drive. It's the most important thing. And you didn't say how it worked in this episode. But yes, Stamets as a character, I'm really enjoying. He's my favorite thing to watch now.
Yeah, he, like, at first I didn't get it. Remember last week I was like, maybe he understands it more, you know? Maybe Anthony Rapp understands where he is more. And I feel like now, after this episode, I was like, yeah, he definitely understands where he is more than everybody else. But
yeah, I think so. Now, let's talk about Stamets, because even though he wasn't the point of view character in this episode, he was the guy.
Yeah, he's
and
in
any one of these time loop episodes, because whether it's Cause and Effect or whether it's like Year of Hell, like there are episodes where there's somebody. You know, it was kind of Crusher, who was like the first one that we POV'd through in Cause and Effect to get to see that, oh, this is a time loop. And so This is an interesting week, because not only did we get a time loop episode that is a Trek trope, we also got from the Orville a time capsule episode, which is a Star Trek trope, big time. So to be able to compare how well they pulled these tropes off, I think, is a really neat spot to be this week. So let's talk about this time loop. We got this time loop in a way that was more sophisticated than most time loops, because often when you're watching even Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, or an episode like Cause and Effect, you're looking at an episode or movie where the viewer is like fed every breadcrumb one at a time, and this wasn't the case. And I thought the fact that they were like jumping through and telling you, I've done this 6 times, and that the viewer got to experience it through Burnham, but the guy who had his hands on what was happening was secondary. That was a neat thing. I found it very sophisticated, very new, very fresh way to do this time loop episode, because I gotta say, when I saw the preview for this, I was like, oh great, we're gonna watch Cause and Effect again. Except now, instead of the comedic actor with a beard from Cheers being the reason it's happening, it's the comedic actor with a beard from The Office is the reason it's happening. But I liked the way they did this time loop. What did you think?
Yes.
Excellent.
I also really I thoroughly enjoyed how it changed every time. Otherwise, it can be monotonous. But also they in making Burnham the person we see the most, we got to see her character develop. Which was also a great part of that episode.
Vanya?
I agree with you. I felt that respected as a viewer and as a Star Trek fan, because instead of it's like they paid attention to the fact that we're Star Trek fans that are watching this, and they were like, oh, they know what a time loop episode is.
Yeah.
So we don't have to do all the things. We can just kind of go ahead. Like, I really love that moment where at the dance, where you know that Stamets has already talked to Burnham, so that then when she pulls Tyler onto the dance floor, she just passes him, so we just see him, so we're like, oh yeah, okay, he's already been there.
He shouldn't be there, he is there, great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he's already talked to her about it, you know, so I thought that, I felt, you know, okay, you trust my intelligence to know what's happening. Yeah.
I like that. Computer?
Derek is joining us this
Derek.
morning.
Yay!
And Derek says that this episode of the Orville reminded him of Sliders from the 90s.
Yes! Sliders! Oh, man.
Oh, I love Sliders!
That was a heck of a show, I gotta say. I did enjoy Sliders quite a bit. Right up until Jerry O'Connell's brother showed up.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, no.
Yeah.
No, that Neanderthal storyline. Anyway, but good point. Very good point.
It was so much like that. Even if, like, the visuals were very much the same. The color and everything.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
and with this storyline and with these characters, the Discovery started to have some fun with itself.
Yes.
I think that finally there was a storyline they could have a little bit of fun with, because that was really missing. There's a lot of humor in all the Star Treks before this.
Well, there are 4 great characters on this show now.
Oh yeah.
And you know, you've got 5 really that are sort of our main characters, and it's been hard to figure it out because we only met 2 of them in the first 2 hours. And then it's like, okay, kill this captain, bring in that captain. Okay, this is a captain that's important. Okay, kill that security officer, bring in this security officer. Okay, now you built your group. And it's like, normally this happens in episode 1, in hour 1, you're meeting these characters. And so now that we're like, oh, we've gotten 2 full hours of Ash, knowing that he is a main character, now it's starting to feel like he's a main character. Yeah. And, you know, we got to see some romance and some interesting stuff pop up in this episode. And we also got to see things happen that didn't happen. And I really am wondering if anyone on Discovery cares that they have turned a scoundrel jester character into a cold-blooded murderer.
Yes,
right.
Because let's talk about Mud.
Here's the thing, Mud has always had like some kind of sexy plan. It's like, right? I'm gonna get a planet full of sexy androids. I'm gonna have these 3 sexy women who trust me with these pills you'll think are sexy. Or, look, I have these magical sex pills. Like, Mud just is like a sex machine. But for some reason, the only thing he does now is like plot and murder people. And you know, the idea of, okay, he's in a time loop, he's almost playing a video game, he can kill that, boot it back up, he didn't kill anybody, they're all okay.
Right.
And so that happened a few times, but then there was that moment after he gave Ash the, like, jelly belly of death, and he disintegrated in what did not look painful. He was just like, Ash was like,
Yeah, that's right.
and then Ash was gone. I'm like, what happened to screaming and excruciating pain?
Maybe it's so painful that you just can't even.
He's just like,
you can't even say it.
Wow, that really hurts. but Mud was fully about to let that version of the time stream carry forward, which means Mud is a killer and willing to be a killer. I just feel like if you wanted to reach into the annals of the original series and pull out a murdery, dangerous, high-stakes character, you picked the wrong one. There are lots of them.
Yeah, I could argue that maybe he changed his tactics by the time he got to Kirk. He was like,
well, clearly.
I was so killy, and now I just want to be sexy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The whole killy thing never worked out.
It wasn't working for me.
Moving on to sex.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I think I'm just going to try the sexy way.
Yeah? I mean, it clearly
we are seeing him before we actually have met him before.
Before he gets all the mustache wax and the razors.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, I'm, just
Computer?
Melissa suggests that the tone of Star Trek Discovery doesn't really feel sexy or light in the sexy Mud kind of way.
It's a different kind of sexy, because this party scene that we got to see a bunch of times, which is kind of like the poker scene from Cause and Effect that lets you like reset yourself back into a pattern you're familiar with. That was a different kind of sexy. Yeah. Like it was weird because this was a clip that they like shared ahead of the broadcast, and I was watching it thinking, oh no, this doesn't. this doesn't look like Star Trek. But I knew this was my, like, austere TNG original series kind of way of looking at it, right? So I was, like, open to this neat, weird way of experiencing Star Trek, because the thing it did make me think of was the J.J. Abrams movies, where it's like, let's play some Beastie Boys to show that we're cool. And it's like, yeah, but let's also make a brainless action movie to show that we can't do science fiction well. So that is something I was thinking of as this party scene was like looming. Days from now, I will have to watch this episode with a party scene in it. And guys, I liked it. I really liked it.
I really liked it too.
Yeah, yeah.
One question I did read somewhere. Somebody asked, why were they having a party and not searching for the admiral?
Oh shit! That's probably Lorca's idea. He's like, guys, I get to keep the ship. It's party time.
And then I thought, okay, now we're really nitpicking. It's a show. You know, they wanted to.
They got something to do.
Something's happened. They're looking for the admiral. We'll find out about it. Actually, it's just kind of like maybe other Star Trek shows, and that it wasn't. You know, things popped up.
Yeah, this felt like a real bottle episode.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened in this episode that mattered, other than Mud showed up and left, so that didn't matter. And then there was a kiss that happened that didn't really happen, but we know there's potential for that. But did we not know that before? Like it's one of those episodes where nothing really happened, but I mean something happened for Stamets. That's about it, because he remembers all those loops.
But something happened for us. I think that part of the thing about that show is that what happened to us is that we got to attach to the characters a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we did the chemistry between Ash and Burnham.
Yeah.
Is fantastic.
And I also, sorry.
No,
please. Yeah.
I also thought like they got to acknowledge it. Like we got to see them acknowledge something that we were like, come on. You know what I mean? And then and even though it was a time loop episode and it went away, they still acknowledged it, which sometimes you don't get. It's like
the fact that they were like,
just
"Oh, I missed our first kiss."
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh boy, we get another first kiss."
We're such children.
Yeah, it's like
back in the schoolyard.
When Star Trek gets to be a soap opera, that could be kind of like delicious and sweet and fun. So that part I didn't mind. The thing I'm really minding is this totally sideways treatment of Mud. That thing stuck in my craw more than anything else. Because Rainn Wilson was like more fun than usual in this. Like he was kind of morose and weird in the first one.
But he could play a good. Sorry to interrupt, Matt. But it seems like Rainn Wilson could play a great original Mud.
He could play a good Mud. Like shave him down, make him sell some sex pills. We're ready to go. I mean, he's got I think two more episodes in his run? I think he's got 4 or 5. I don't know. But he's got some more episodes that are going to happen, which is weird because it seems like they just like tidied up his storyline and put him in the place where he needs to be ready for the original series.
I kind of don't want to see it.
Yes,
again.
exactly.
I'm okay.
Anticlimactic. The ending.
Yeah.
The ending didn't really fit. His punishment didn't really fit his crimes, right?
No.
It's more like his punishment was more the punishment that original series Mud would get.
Yeah, for one of his like zany, weird, scoundrelly ploys.
Yeah.
It's a bit like what happened with Trelane in The Squire of Gothos, when it's like, oh, but Daddy, no! After he's like put hundreds of people potentially to their deaths if he wasn't careful, because his plaything was, a ship full of live humans.
Right.
I felt, which Squire of Gothos, oddly enough, is an episode where Kirk asks Uhura to radio the Discovery.
Oh,
right?
I like that.
That's kind of cool.
I like
but I think it's kind of neat that we were able to watch Lorca die so many hilarious times.
I totally as soon as he said I've killed, I was like, oh, please let us see it. Oh, please let us see all the killings. Like I actually said it aloud.
I want to watch Captain Malfoy die so many times, and we got it. And that was really fun. It's like disintegration, other disintegration, crazy weapon disintegration, and then disintegration, reintegration in space. Like that was good. And I love the little zoom where it's like, oh, there he is, and he's dead. That I found very fun, and each time I was like, oh, maybe we finally lose Lorca. Oh no, he's going to keep him. Oh, maybe no, he's back. So I did find that quite fun. There were moments of levity in this episode, but an episode that otherwise had a ton of stakes. And like you were saying, it all of a sudden turned into this. The stakes are gone. Everything's fine. No big deal. Ha ha. Go hang out with your father-in-law.
Yeah.
And it just felt like
Who
we
looked-
spent like 45 minutes in a life or death situation, and then we kind of giggled it off,
And the
which is a bit of an original series thing.
I was just dun, 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 dun. Like I
And
missed
the-
that music.
Yeah,
It was
right.
very-
Father-in-law was dressed more like a parody of a bad guy than than a bad
That's
guy.
a bad guy from the Orville. In like a pleather evil man costume.
Vest and cape.
Yeah. Now, our villains in the Orville, before we get to the villains in the Orville, computer?
Derek would like to see the Enterprise with Captain Pike at command and the Discovery meet.
Now, let's talk about that. There has been, I'm going to say a leak, because if it was a rumor, no one would have taken it down immediately. But there was a leak about the fact that this season of Discovery has a Constitution ship. Constitution-class ship, which is the kind of ship that the Enterprise is. The Defiant is one of those as well. The original series Defiant, not the DS9 Defiant. There are a number of Constitution-class ships. There's 12 of them. So the question has always been on Trekkies' minds, will Discovery show us the ship? Because the thing about the Constitution-class vessels is they're as old as the Shenzhou, which means they're kicking around, and they should look pretty much like the Shenzhou, except they fucking don't. They look like bright, ridiculous... No, I guess at this point they haven't been painted red yet, but they look like a 1960s set. So the thing that was leaked was the fact that, and I think it was Anovos that leaked this through Twitter, and then it was taken down. It's been redesigned. The Constitution has been redesigned, which means this whole maybe canon here will fit there. Don't worry, guys, canon will all shape up together. Is sounding less and less like it's going to happen, and more like CBS trying to continue to undo Fuller's plan to do like a cool retro series, which is what Discovery was supposed to be. And instead, they've got this redesigned, almost Star Trek, not Star Trek visual tone to it, and. Shit, man, we're going to see a new Constitution class, and I'm not cool with that, but that's, I mean, I don't want to think of myself as a purist, but if you didn't want to make a Star Trek prequel, here's something, don't. Like, you could go anywhere with this shit. Like, the very first time they made a new Star Trek series, they jumped forward 100 years. Like, this is not boldly go, man. Where no one's gone before. Try it. But you know, if you're going to do a prequel show, you're making a show about continuity porn. You're making it for us.
Yeah.
You know, you're making the 4th season of Enterprise. That's continuity porn that makes us all go, oh yeah, of course, Orions, and oh yeah, that's how the augments turned Klingons into non-bumpy. Like, that's how you do it. So it's interesting that they're revisiting this timeline and totally throwing the baby and the bathwater out and being like, hey, new Star Trek. So that's Derek, long and short. Yeah, Constitution class. But let's go back to the Orville, and let's talk about the villain in the Orville, which was democracy. What did you think of this episode?
Pure democracy.
Pure absolute democracy. Which, let's be clear, democracy killed Jesus, killed Socrates, gave us Hitler and Trump. Well, no, the U.S. isn't a democracy, it's a republic. If it was a democracy, it would be President Clinton. But it's a republic, so it's President Trump. So sometimes absolute democracy maybe wouldn't be so bad. But let's talk about the absolute democracy of the Orville and of majority rule.
They handled it in a clever, funny way.
Right.
I thought that, I found this episode was even funnier than the last one, and I just thought it was really clever the way that the American Idol reference, and the I was really also taken in by the visuals of it, the way, and I thought, I think were we talking just a few minutes ago, Matt, about how it almost felt a little bit like they were the cast, the crew of the
Orville?
the Orville, yes, is younger or newer,
Yeah.
than the
A bit less advanced than the people they were visiting.
But the visuals worked. The way that they played up, the 21st century things that are kind of ridiculous, that really worked. And I thought, once again, the Orville's able to talk, very smartly about an important topic in a really funny way.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a long history of Star Trek time capsule episodes, whether it's Future's End happening in the 90s with Voyager. I mean, it is the cheapest time to show. If you want to show Earth, show it now. And sometimes it's a contemporary mirror society that is much like what Earth was, and other times it's time travel to get you to actual Earth. But it's the original series did this with, and often with the space race and the battle with the Russians, whether it was Assignment Earth or Tomorrow is Yesterday. Like, there's a long history of going back to now on Star Trek. And, other times it's Miri. It's an episode where you're going to a world that was developing like ours and then went off in another direction. And it was kind of amazing to see, like, what would happen if Reddit was government.
Yeah.
Because,
it's true, Matt.
without leaders, everyone just gets an opinion. And Isaac put it best when he said, "Oh, you're confusing expertise for opinion."
Yes.
And it's like, oh, right. We do that all the time.
Yes.
That's like everyone gets a platform. We have a platform.
And I loved when they brought up the
granted, we are
medicine.
experts at Star Trek.
Yes. they brought up medicine. That was
Yes.
how they used that.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out which how to avoid getting a disease or something? Well, we vote
on it.
We vote, and the majority has to be right because more people like it. So that kind of thinking is what's happening now in in a lot of parts of the world, especially America.
Yeah.
Especially America.
Now, Vanya, we were talking about another original series episode that you revisited that made you really think about this one. This episode of the Orville.
A Taste of Armageddon.
Yeah.
Where Kirk has there are two people on this. There are two nations on this planet, and they're at war the whole entire for 500 years or something. But they have their battles through computer simulations, and then they just go into a disintegration machine. You have an allotment of people that just show up, and they just walk into it and die. And Kirk handles it very differently from the Orville crew, where he just kind of says, "I'm just going to destroy this because it's ridiculous, and you should know what war feels like. Then maybe you'll stop having war." And he just makes the decision for them, just.
Prime directive, Schmime directive.
Out the window. So that's kind of it's interesting because that's original Star Trek, but seemingly not Star Trek.
Yeah.
Which I think some people would claim that's not very Star Trek, but it happened in an original series. So, where he just makes a decision like that, which we know Kirk does all the time, right?
Yeah, and Picard does all the time in the movies. Because John McClane Picard in every movie just doesn't care about a diplomat Picard that he was in the TV show. Computer?
Yeah, Derek thinks that this episode of the Orville pulled a lot from Star Trek original series and TNG when encountering less developed civilizations. So
yeah, it's interesting because Deep Space Nine was about about big concepts.
Yes.
Voyager was about schlocky exploring.
Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, Gilligan's Island. But the thing that TNG and definitely the original series did was they would take an episode and deal with one issue under a microscope.
Yes.
And the Orville does that all the time and so well.
Yeah, they've tapped into that older, definitely TNG and original Trek. It started to change with Deep Space Nine for sure. And Discovery doesn't fit into that, what they're doing, but I think our nostalgia for the first two Star Treks really make us think, okay, Orville is
Gene Roddenberry Star Trek. I mean, really, the thing is, later in The Next Generation, it kind of stopped doing that as well, because Gene Roddenberry only really had control over it for the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And then his power started to wane because there were so many like backroom complicated things. He didn't even really want to make the Next Generation, and then wound up making it because when Phase 2 didn't work out, he was really disenfranchised, and then he did some stuff with NBC that involved androids that I thought were really cool. But like certain things didn't pan out, and then he made Star Trek: The Next Generation, and when he had power over it, The Next Generation was an allegory show. And when he stopped having power over it, it became a really good science fiction show. And then every episode, every series after that, kind of stopped dealing with as much on-the-nose allegory. And I miss it. And we get it with the Orville. Like, Gene Roddenberry would be making episodes like the Orville is making if he was still around.
I don't know if I totally, like...
Not funny, but...
I don't know if I completely miss it. I definitely love it as it was, but I like the growth of having, like, bigger stories. Because Deep Space Nine was still dealing with social issues, like religion and war and all that stuff, but on it, like,
as a serial. Yeah, it became
longer,
a serial, yes.
more of a serial scale. And I'm okay with that change. Because... I don't know if we could stay in the same spot forever, and I feel like they have their own space where it works. Maybe we do need a little bit more of that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 15 years since we were getting it on like a regular part of our diet, and so now that we're getting it all the time. Computer?
We have a comment from Heath, who's sorry he wasn't able to be here this evening. He's saying that he really loved the Orville this week.
Yeah, man, the Orville hit like a lot of interesting things, especially in a week where we're starting to see the ramifications of meddling in a democracy that's happening in America right now. That's exactly what the Orville does. They, as a foreign power, as an alien power, go in and mess with the democracy. And... it's not revealing yourselves to the primitives, but it is breaking the Prime Directive, if they had such a thing. And I thought it was really interesting that the people on the Orville seem to be, like, wacky and silly, but their admirals that they deal with are not.
Right, that's true.
When the admiral's like, yeah, your man's gonna die, because you seem to be a shit captain, what's happening on your ship? And it's like,
on camera.
It was great to see more Star Trek faces. But yeah, it's one of those things where, as great an episode of the original series the Orville put up, it did give us that wacky other tone that made it not just feel like a rehash of the original series. You know, it wasn't just a taste of Armageddon.
No.
It was all of that now, plus this, like, zany tone.
Yeah, and it's topical, right? Like, we all are, like, we're living it, so it's really, it touches it close to home, right?
And when I was done with that episode, I was like, oh man, that was great. Oh shit. I'm just about to go into the news feed and share my thoughts on, oh, man.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do
We're not a democracy, don't worry, man.
Right?
Don't worry.
Thankfully.
We're not a pure one.
Yeah.
There's nothing pure.
Yeah, we have representation by population, and then there's the Republic. Like, these pure democracies, man. Dangerous. Dangerous things.
I like the way it ended.
Yes. It had a beautiful ending.
Yeah. Optimistically, like original Star Trek. So.
But the question is, why do you think the sort of lead human from that place decided to change her ways? What was the inciting incident for her that was like, yeah, you know what? I shouldn't up and down vote. I should just turn it off. What do you think that was?
I think it must have been her. It wasn't really fleshed out a lot. And so I think it must have just been, I just assumed, oh, she had this incredible experience. Maybe she saw something. She was affected by it in a way that made her think, oh, I'd rather it be like that than be like this. Or maybe it was in seeing, she experiencing the power she had to completely affect something. They told some lies. They made some stuff up to save him. So maybe it was a combination of things. I'm not sure that they wanted us to think about it that much, but if we're going to think, I think those two things must have been.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you're experiencing with something with other people and they're in danger or they're concerned about things and you're seeing how they're decent people and you're like, oh, I can actually make a change. Like, I can be helpful to somebody. and you're seeing how people love this person, then you're kind of like, what? How am I really judging people? Like, what am I basing it on? Like, this person who I think is bad, I'm seeing all these people that consider him, like, a loved one. Like, maybe I shouldn't look at it, like, as simply as that.
Yeah, I just assumed her worldview was just shattered.
Yeah.
And so putting it back together in the form of this aspirational thing that she just experienced, that does it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting that they didn't really go into it, but I guess we're just supposed to decide for ourselves why that might have happened.
Maybe they're doing the same thing that Discovery did and treating us like we know what we're watching.
Yeah, you're an adult. Figure it out for yourself.
We do.
Now, going back to the Discovery, we've got an episode that not coming up yet, but we've got an episode where there are some real past Star Treks that it can be compared to in such a concrete way. And the Orville, we have some past Star Trek episodes that we can compare to in a concrete way. So I think it might be time to pass some judgment and go to Red Alert.
R.
That's it. Red Alert. Nice work. Tactical. Strong work. Read Alert. So let's talk about whether we thought Discovery managed to be like, honest to goodness, heart of Star Trek. Vanya?
Yes, I think it did. I think it tracked it. Because basically it was living in a very Star Trek trope, and it's a bottle episode. So yeah, like I mean, it lived in that space, and I think that definitely it's happened in Star Trek before. Definitely met those needs, and I really liked it. And it had some Star Trek-y moments. Some, relationships things between the crew where we're, like, looking at the crew work together, which to me is also very Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the Orville. What do you think?
Also tracked it.
All right.
I also tracked it because, again, living in a very Star Trek trope, you know what I mean? Going back to now, is how you put it.
Yeah.
And having social commentary, which is very Roddenberry Star Trek. And again, the care of you caring about your crew and, working together and changing somebody's perspectives. That's always a very Star Trek thing. So, tracked it also.
All right. Sonia.
She said it so eloquently.
Right?
I agree. Both episodes, there were the tropes, there were the relationships, there was the fact that they were both bottle episodes, there was optimism at the end of them. So for all those reasons, I thought both shows this week tracked it.
Nice. All right.
So, Matt?
I felt like the Orville had a character that took me out of the show. But the Discovery, that episode had a character that took me out of the universe. It was like, that's not Mud. That's not Mud. You could have picked anybody else, but you picked Mud.
You really loved Mud. You loved the original.
I mean, he had an Irish accent when he showed up. It's like, it's just right in my heartstrings. But those are the only two things that I, like, nitpicked and really didn't like. So those things aside, the actual heart of these two episodes, the heart of the Orville is so Star Trek in this episode. It gives us things we've seen in the past, but brings it to now, makes it relevant. It makes it something we have to see. And to me, whether it's Future's End talking to us about corporate greed and like crazy, I call myself a patriot, people in bunkers, and white nationalists, like they were dealing with some interesting shit in the 90s, or the 60s, where they were dealing with mutually assured destruction and the fear of the Red Menace. It gave us the fear of social media as a tool where the court of public opinion is absolute democracy, where we decide who to crucify because there's a mob mentality. And I feel like that is so Star Trek. Orville completely trekked it. Discovery, from like a structural standpoint, gave us a beautiful bottle episode about time loops that I enjoyed every moment of, that didn't include Mud, and then it got to the end and I thought, well shit, that was Star Trek. It didn't examine anything like super important. but not every episode of Star Trek does.
That's right. That's right. And not all of them end strongly either. So even though Discovery,
you're quite right.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like this episode of Discovery tracked it.
Oh my God! Do we have 2 Trexit from you?
We got 2 Trexit from me, and we got 2 Trexit from you,
And you?
and we got 2 Trexit from you. This is a perfect 6 out of 6 Trexit.
Wow.
This has never happened, people.
And might not happen again.
Yeah, this is
Tell everybody
momentous.
about this episode.
Yeah, this is a big deal. So, shit. We're in like a golden age.
Yeah, that's true. This is like,
And that's a thing to
And it's-
really appreciate.
and it's kind of symbolic. They lined up this week,
Right?
both on their 7th episode, and they're
And they both
symbiotic.
pulled it off, man. They both pulled off
Symbiont.
classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dax, they're like Dax.
Like Dax. they pulled off great Star Trek. Computer?
Well, Derek agrees. He's a Trekit for both series.
Nice.
Heath wants to be specific and say that the Orville makes him care. He puts the Orville a little bit ahead because
Yeah.
it makes him care.
The Orville told me something that I can walk away from the show and be like, I'm going to examine my world differently. And to me, that's what Star Trek really does. I mean, Discovery treks it from like the perspective of other episodes haven't been worse. You know, other episodes have been worse, and other ones, it's better than some. There is that perspective where I don't really think about the world differently because of that episode of Discovery. And so, in my, like, if I was being the contrarian, just to be a contrarian, I would say, yeah, Discovery didn't do it as well as the Orville.
Can't go back.
I can't go back.
Can't go back.
Watching them, I felt like I was watching Star Trek both times, which was a big deal.
I
But
do feel like I have to start decided, once about 3 or 4 episodes in with Discovery, I was going to think about it differently than any other Star Trek I would watch, because thinking about it is one big piece.
Yeah.
This being the exception, because it is
a bottle, yeah.
episode, but yeah, I feel like if we look at it like that, it is being like presented differently. Maybe if we see, it's like by the end, it's like, oh, this is its entire message. Like maybe they're telling one story that is one message.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it's like that, then
yeah,
have to wait longer.
I mean, this episode of Discovery was good, late, next generation Star Trek.
Yeah.
It was not good, original series, Gene Roddenberry's in charge Star Trek. It wasn't that kind of Star Trek. But it was like competently made, well-told story that clicked. The characters were working together. There are elements of this that Gene Roddenberry would have said, yeah, that's Star Trek. Because, not every episode makes you change the way you see the world. Maybe they should. But I think it's okay. I'm willing to say we got this close to this feeling like Star Trek. I'm going to say it feels like Star Trek. And maybe I will be less forgiving if this is the best it gets.
Yeah, I suspect you will be, man.
Yeah, like, I'm excited that we've hit this new plateau of characters are wonderful, I'm enjoying them, they're interacting and working together, they're, like, even the background characters had a couple of words that they got to say this time around.
Yeah, they were like acknowledged.
Yeah, like some of the Canadian actors were like, oh, I got the nod at the lead character. Like, that's a big deal. It's something. And I feel like there's good direction. The momentum of Discovery is going the right way. Computer?
Jeff Kelly's chiming in saying that Discovery felt Deep Space Nine-y to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of Worf. I'm rewatching Deep Space Nine. Seeing a lot of Worf, and Burnham is seeming to me a little bit like that, more than Vulcan. Maybe it's because she doesn't look like a Vulcan.
Yeah.
I hope that we get to see more of the Burnham we saw in this last episode, where she is a little bit more relaxed, where she's opening up a little bit to Ash, and I want to see a little bit more of that Burnham.
Yeah,
Has a bit of a sense of humor and.
Yeah, I think we saw that in the previous episode too, and with the Sarek episode, because even when I was rewatching that episode when she talks to Sarek in the hospital, and as she's walking out, she's like, well, yeah, we'll talk about it, father. Like, nails him. You know what I mean? It's sassy, right? It's not something we get, and we kind of see, like, it opening up a bit.
I feel like she's settling into the character. And, none of the Star Trek characters are, like, perfect out of the gate, necessarily. I mean, McCoy is kind of perfect out of the gate, but he's a if your benchmark is DeForest Kelley, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a show where we're really seeing them like tuck into their place and hopefully go into an interesting adventure together now that we're feeling them as a crew.
Yeah.
And if there can be some social commentary beyond, it's awesome to have people of color.
Yeah.
I mean, Gene Roddenberry wanted Yaphet Kotto to play Picard. Like that was a black man that was going to be the second captain. So that's not enough. Gay characters, that's not enough.
Right.
It's great.
It's huge for Star Trek, really.
It's big for Star Trek,
at the same time, it's like,
but Star Trek,
the social commentary.
Yeah, Star Trek is on the bleeding edge normally.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, yay, Star Trek caught up. That's not what you do, Star Trek.
Ahead.
You are ahead of the curve. So, yeah, gay characters, not enough. I want to see them. I want to see something more forward. I want to see something on this show that makes us consider the world and make us want to make our world better. That's what Star Trek does.
Oddly, we are playing catch up. Like Star Trek is playing catch up, and I think that's not Discovery's fault. That's socially our fault that it took so long for Star Trek to be able to have gay characters together. Like is a big deal for That's kind of sad. You know what I mean?
And I mean Star Trek tells us what to do.
Yeah.
And Star Trek shouldn't ask us for permission.
That's true.
Computer?
Ben Stacy's joining us.
Hey!
And he's saying that he's loving the Orville. He felt like this week's episode was the best so far and very timely.
Oh, thanks, Ben. I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, super timely. And I think that's the thing that episode of the Orville in 15 years is going to look like such an anachronism. But it's also going to be a time capsule. I recently watched Future's End again because I wanted to feel what that was like. Because I watched it in 1996 or 98 or whenever it came out. And it was contemporary. And I haven't seen it since. And going back to watch it again with like Sarah Silverman's crazy, awesome character in it. And it felt like a period piece. And that's the great thing about these time capsule episodes. They become period pieces. Whereas this episode of Discovery and all these episodes of Discovery are just science fiction that we'll always be able to look at as science fiction. But these time capsule episodes are special.
Skinny jeans.
That
skinny jeans thing.
Yeah, skinny jeans, man. God, that was funny. Yeah, if I lean back, I'll give myself a vasectomy. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, guys, that is 6 out of 6. Everybody thought they tracked it with me like it's like this side of a thumbs up. Just this side. So hopefully we can get even closer to this all the way. But we've got an episode of each this week, which is exciting because we've only got 2 more weeks until Discovery goes on hiatus and I cancel my CBS All Access membership until it comes back. So, sorry, CBS. Make more Star Trek fast. That's all I can say. So, yeah, we'll be back next week, and it'll be time to do this one more time. Maybe it's all getting better. Guys,
don't jinx us.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped too.
All right. So we'll hopefully be able to make it so.